This weapon is exceptionally heavy. It weighs almost 25 pounds, but it was very effective on the battlefield. They would use this on into the opening days, actually, of World War II. And so if the bolt-action rifle gave a soldier a lot of firepower, this kind of automatic weapon made him a much more formidable opponent. We'll demonstrate this piece. So these old weapons don't like blanks. They actually prefer to have a round going down range. We don't do that. The neighbors, don't appreciate it. So they can be a little bit finicky. So the problem with the Lewis gun, of course, was that it was very, very heavy. The American Army also carried a French automatic rifle called the Show, which Americans nicknamed the So-So because it had a tendency to jam and malfunction. We decided we wanted a weapon of our own. And so John Browning invented one of the most famous firearms to ever be carried by an American soldier, and that was the Browning automatic rifle, which we are bringing out now. Now, this weapon is used by American forces in World War II and Korea, but it actually enters combat in World War I, toward the very tail end of the conflict. And one of the first divisions to get the BAR was the 36th Infantry Division. So when we went into combat on October 7th of 1918 at Saint-Étienne in France, doughboys from the 36th were carrying the Browning automatic rifle. It's chambered in .30-06. It is full automatic. It has two settings, fast and slow. 20-round box magazine that is inserted into the bottom of the piece. Pull back the bolt. You're ready to fire. Demonstrate your weapon. The BAR only weighs 18 pounds, and it uses the same ammunition as the .03 Springfield. And so it was an excellent addition to the arsenal of the American soldier. Of course, for all the firepower the infantryman has on the battlefield, he also is facing an enormous amount of resistance in an attempt to attack. So what you see here in front of me is a typical battlefield of World War I. Barbed wire was used extensively to impede the advance of attacking troops. Artillery, heavy guns firing from 6, 7, 10, 15, 20 miles away was the great killer in World War I, inflicting something like 85% of all the casualties. And what you see here is the sector of the Western Front that has been heavily shelled, thus all the pockmarks and the shell holes out here. That was an attempt to knock down the barbed wire as well as to destroy the enemy positions. And the enemy was usually very deeply entrenched, and those trenches would have to take a direct hit in order to suffer damage due to artillery fire. And so you'll notice that what we've managed to do with all this artillery preparation is to chew up the ground without appreciably knocking down the barbed wire or hurting the enemy position whatsoever. Those German trenches were manned not only by enemy troops carrying bolt-action rifles, but also the machine gun. And the widespread use of machine guns in World War I is what had dramatically changed the calculus of war. What you see here behind me in the German trench is a Maxim MG08. It is a water-cooled heavy machine gun capable of putting 450 rounds of 8mm ammunition downrange every 60 seconds. This was the great killer in infantry combat during the First World War, and we're going to let you see what that looks like. Demonstrate your weapon. As the German army became smaller and smaller due to the depletion of its manpower, it actually gave more and more machine guns to its troops. So the firepower of the German army gets more lethal as the war goes on, not less so, despite the diminution of their firepower. The answer to the machine gun, to barbed wire, was the tank. And down there on the far end of the battlefield, you see a French FT-17 Renault light tank. The tank was actually a code name invented by the British for what we would call the armored fighting vehicle today. They were not very heavily armored. They were mechanically incredibly finicky. They could not always negotiate the shattered no man's land between the trenches, but if you could get these things close enough, they could knock down the barbed wire, clear a path for the infantry, deal with the German machine guns. When tanks were first used in World War I, they were a revelation in warfare. The Germans very quickly got good at knocking out tanks, but nonetheless, this gave the Allies a great advantage. And so what we're going to do for you now is we're going to take you back in time to October of 1918, to the Western Front in the Champagne sector of France, to the right flank of the 36th Infantry Division, which has been attached to the French 4th Army. The American 1st Army is engaged in the bloody Meuse-Argonne offensive, the biggest, bloodiest, longest battle that the Americans will fight in World War I. We are advancing on the left flank of the American Army, trying to keep the Germans occupied so that they cannot reinforce the Meuse-Argonne front. The Allied positions are down there in those woods. The enemy position here in this trench, this is what's called a stepped trench, a communication trench leading to the back of it. We'll see a German field piece behind it that would actually be several miles to the rear, but at this point in the war, the Germans sometimes brought these guns up close so that they could deal with enemy tanks. Artillery barrage that has preceded us has pockmarked the battlefield, but not knocked down the barbed wire. And so what the doughboys are going to have to do is come out of that wood line and try and cross this battlefield in the face of that machine gun and the small arms fire and the artillery fire of the enemy and close on this trench and take it. Typically, these kind of attacks were designed so that there was a heavy artillery preparation. Then you would attack in waves. So a first wave would come out. Its job would be to take the first enemy trench. Then on a schedule, the second wave would come out to pass through the first wave and attack the enemy reserve trench. Typically, of course, that tactic did not work as designed because the first wave would get bogged down. The second wave advanced on schedule. It would merge with the first wave and bog down as well. And at that point, it was a question of whether or not the doughboys could manage to bull their way through the enemy defenses. This is the battle that we are about to demonstrate. As Lisa said just a few minutes ago, please remember that what we are doing out here is very dangerous. We are firing blank rounds, but a close range of blank round puts out a plug of compressed air that's as good as a bullet. It can and will kill you. I cannot blank adapt moving pyrotechnic charges or moving vehicles. So stay behind the traffic cones. You'll be perfectly safe. When we're done, I'll have a chance to come back and make a few pleasant remarks to you. But now's the time to get your camera out and get ready to take some cool pictures and some cool video.
Maybe it'll be a tie.
Mom, shush.
Oh no. German surrendered, or did you call?
Fall in!
The last one.
Oh, really?
That was so cool.